Okay, today I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this off-grid homestead is working. The necessary wood stove, pretty standard procedure in most off-grid places. This is the daddy bear of the Fisher. I have the baby bear in the Hunchak trailer. And this thing throws a tremendous amount of heat. This cabin is about 750 to 800 square feet. I've never actually measured it. And this heats it no problem, no matter how cold it gets here. In addition to that, we have a standard array of cast iron cookware. I do a lot of cooking with the cast iron on the stove. I also like to use stainless steel. And this little guy here, as you can see, those are little corn cobs cast into the I don't know if I can get close enough. I don't know if you, yeah, you can see that, I think. The little corn kernels in there cast into the iron. So when you're making little tiny loaves of bread, or little biscuits basically, they come out looking like little corn cobs, which is just kind of fun. That little guy there is actually a coffee grinder, I guess, but I've been using it mostly for a spice grinder. But there are so many things that you can get that aren't powered, that don't require electricity. You just have to look around. It's quite surprising the variety of things that you can still get. One of the things that I have, which I just got recently, is a grain mill, hand crank. Just keep the dust out of it. The crank is right here, and it just snaps into the side, kind of like a socket on a tool set. And this little hopper on the top here holds 4.5 cups. And when you grind it, you will end up with about 7 to 7.5 cups of flour. So if you can get yourself, well, even if you're going to grow it, which I intend to do next year, I hope, I can get about a bushel of grain out of 1,000 square feet of garden is the way they usually do it. And a bushel of grain is about 60 pounds. Now, the whole advantage to this, and somebody's going to say, why don't you just go and buy, 10 bags of flour and store it away somewhere and you'll have it, indefinitely. That's not true, because flour, first off, enriched flour isn't. They take out like 50 different items that are nutritional value from the grain and put back 5, and the 5 or 10 that they put back are in some kind of a chemical version, not natural. So you're not getting anything good there. But the big thing is flour just only keeps a short period of time. You might, even if you seal it and put it in buckets and everything else, it's hard to keep flour that's already ground much longer than several months, possibly a year. Grain, as long as it's still in the husk, it's off the stem, but still in the husk, if you can keep it dry, you don't want it moldy, of course, but if you can keep it dry, it will last 20 to 30 years. 20 to 30 years. And of course, you can use some of that grain to grind for flour, and you can save a portion of it to replant for the following year. So you'll never have to store it, vast amounts of it. It just replenishes itself. There's just an unlimited number of items that you can get that are hand powered. If I lived in the US, boy, I tell you, I think I'd probably camped out at Lehman's store. But this little unit here, and you don't have to pay a lot of money for these. I picked this up, I can't remember, at a second-hand shop or something where I get most of my things. That's a food processor. And this little drum here, you feed your whatever, your cabbage or whatever in there, and you crank the handle, and as you can see, it turns, and all these little edges are quite sharp, and there are 5 drums in total. This just pops off, and you can pop these other ones on. And as you can see, they have different cutting surfaces. This one is similar to the one on there, but much finer for grating, as you can see. And these things were made a long time ago. It's all cast, it's very solid, very well built. These things will never break. They'll never run out of power, and they'll always be there for you. Now, they're not easy to find, I know that, but keep your eye open. You just have to keep watching. There occasionally are deals out there, and if you can afford it, and certainly if you live in the States, that's even better. Lehman's is just a tremendous source of all this stuff, so it's amazing, what you can actually still get. Another item is this wringer washer. Now this washer is now almost 77 years old. It sat for years and years in somebody's shed, and then finally when the shed was cleaned out, I don't know who it was, it ended up at a second-hand shop. And I happened to walk in when it first got there. I don't believe it was even out on the floor. I could see it through the door in their back room. It was pretty dirty from sitting in the shed, but the shed had been dry. It wasn't in any bad shape. It just was a mess. And I just offered him to take it as it was without them so much as cleaning it up, and I bought it for $25. And this thing works great. One of the reasons it works so good is that it's simple. The second reason that it works so good is that back in the day, 74, 76 years ago, whatever it is, they actually built things of quality. The goal of the company was to try to build the best thing they could so that they could use that as a selling feature. Unlike today, when planned obsolescence means that let's just get it done as cheap as possible. Let's hope that it breaks down in 3 or 4 years, just long enough that people aren't completely aggravated that it didn't last longer, but then they have to come and buy another one. So today, everything is greed and quality and honesty and just pride just doesn't exist, or at least in 99% of what you see nowadays. This tank here, which I just picked up a couple of days ago, was a shipping container for food products. This particular one had agave oil juice syrup, agave syrup. It's approximately 250 gallons, and it's going to be my cistern, and it's going to make just a really good reservoir. I can filter water right from the lake, which is right there. So I have a small gas pump. Some of these modern things nowadays, like that gas water pump and so on, they are great. They just make life so much easier. I could carry buckets of water up here and fill that thing up and do that from time to time. But boy, I'll tell you, I'm not against technology. I'm just against cheap technology. Stuff that's poorly made on purpose. So this cistern will be built in. That's the side door of the house, of the cabin, and so that will, and the door is behind that tarp. I had the door out and I was replacing it, so I had stapled that old piece of tarp there, and I've just left it there as a windbreak. There's going to be a small structure here, which will be probably a sauna bathroom, and then this tank will be incorporated into that. The kitchen is right inside that window, so there will be a pump assembly and running water, and that will be, a very, very simple way of doing it, and it's not costly. So all of the grass that you see here, it's not actually hay, it's grass. I went to buy a couple of bales of hay or straw with the intention of just breaking it up like this as a kind of a mulch, which will, when the garden's harvested, it will be tilled into the soil and allowed to decompose over winter. They go around here in this district, probably everywhere, and cut the grass on the roadsides, and they cut from the edge of the gravel sort of down along the edge of the ditch so that you can see where the ditch is, and that way when people pull over on these gravel roads, they don't pull right into the ditch because they can't see where it drops off. And it's just cut there, and of course it just lays there. Now this was cut probably a week ago, and we've had sunny weather for that week, so it's nicely dried. And I'll tell you, there's just, every road around here, every gravel road, there's hundreds of miles, and they all have this stuff all along the side. So I just drove along with the trailer on the back of the vehicle, and I'd drive about 100 feet, and I'd get out with my fork, and I'd just fork it all up and fill it in the trailer. And I filled a 6x12 trailer about 3 feet deep. There's more of it than this, and it just for the 20 or 30 minutes of it took to do it. And if I need more, and I probably will, there's a lot of roads around here. There's an unlimited supply of this. And even though there are some bits and pieces of stick and so in here, which I'll pick out, you could feed a herd of goats with this stuff just without even having to pay anything. It's just for a little bit of time to do it. So you have to be a little bit, aware of opportunities. You know, when you see something that's there, recognize it, and get out there and do it. Okay, this garden will be expanded somewhat over in that direction, mostly over here. I've got a tarp here to kill some more of the grass, and I'm going to keep coming back this way here, and perhaps a little bit out to the side there, but I want to keep enough room after I trim these boughs just a little bit to be able to get the bigger farm tractor around here, because there's a grade over there, a nice gentle grade that allows me, it's actually made as a driveway or a pathway, to drive the tractor down into the lower level without being too steep or too much of an angle. So as this garden gets bigger, holy, we got an awful wind thing going on here. We're calling for a storm, and it looks like we might actually really get it big time. It'll help wash this stuff, get it nice and wet, and hold it down anyway. However, a good portion of this garden next year will be under greenhouse, and I'm going to build my own, and I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a few moments. But again, there's a cost-effective way to do this, and all they want to do when they talk about greenhouses is sell you things. It's just everything is money. Everything is money. Money is just the whole world nowadays, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, so this tarp here is 20 feet by approximately 20 feet. It's upside down. I'm just drying it off. I'm going to fold it up here very shortly before the rain starts. As you can see, the outside of it is just that typical tarp. This was once a garage shelter, and you can buy those garage shelters pretty inexpensively, relatively speaking. You know, you can buy, this one was I think 10 by 20, and with the frame and everything, it all came in as they usually do in a kit. And I think you can pick them up for $200 or $300 depending on the quality and where you get them. This makes a pretty dandy cover for a greenhouse. Now you look at the yellowy caramel color of this thing and you'd think, boy, you know, that's not going to let enough light in. Let me show you something here. Okay, this is where that tarp was laid out. It was laid out here for 6 weeks, actually almost 7 weeks. And as you can see the area where it was laid out. You can see the outline of it. The grass and weeds and whatever is richer underneath it, as you can tell, than the surrounding area. That's what happens. Now the idea with that was that it was going to kill that grass and make it easier for me to turn it up into a garden, in the fall here. Obviously that didn't happen. That grass grew richer than the stuff around it under that yellowish tarp laid flat down on there. Now I've got this blue in here. I don't know if it's any better, any more light resistant or not, so I'll have to look underneath. But what I'm saying is that when you look at greenhouses, it's a lot of time it'll put you off because you think, well, geez, I have to buy the special greenhouse plastic that's more UV resistant. Okay, it does last longer, but it's 2 or 3 times the price. Then you find out that once you've got that, and I've watched a lot of the videos specifically on these greenhouses, high towers they call them now, and the next thing you know, it gets so hot inside there that you're growing your vegetables and cooking them all at the same time. So the next thing you know, somebody's spending a whole lot of money to buy sunscreen, netting or whatever it is, sun cloth, to shelter the vegetables inside the greenhouse. Kind of counterproductive. You spend a lot of money to get the clearer plastic so that everything inside grows, then you turn around and spend double the amount of money again to get shade cloth to help cover up the amount of sun that gets in there. They tell you that's the way you have to go. Why? Money. So all you have to do is make up a framework. You can put it anywhere, and it can be almost any size you want. You can buy tarps. You don't have to necessarily, now you can just go and buy one of those tent garages. That's probably the quickest and simplest way, because then you've got the framework and everything. What I'm going to do with mine is, when I set the frame up, the poles for the roof, the rafter type poles and so on, are approximately 4 feet apart. So there's somewhat of a sag in there, simply because there's no support. So what I'm going to do is just get some regular field fencing that you would use if you were fencing in cattle, and I'm going to erect the frame up there and get it in good order. I'm going to put the fencing over top of the frame and put it on there with zip ties or whatever, and put it on snug so that it will give a really good supporting area, and obviously much smaller, because there's only the small panels opening that you get in a farm fence. No, it's sort of, what, 6 by 9 or whatever it is. And then I'm making sure that I put that fence on with any of the sharper edges in towards the frame. Then I'm going to put the tarp or the cover over that, just as it normally would be, and it will have a whole lot more support against rain, wind. Now, I probably won't leave it up in the wintertime, otherwise it would support it during snow as well. And I might. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to be able to keep the snow off of it from time to time, so... but there's another idea, and you can do the whole darn thing for a couple $100, maybe $300. It's a whole lot less than what you'd have to pay for a greenhouse, even if you built it by hand yourself. And good grief, I can't imagine what it would cost to have somebody come in and do it. Well, one thing about being on an off-grid homestead is that there's always work to be done, and some of it can be fairly heavy work. This isn't particularly heavy, but some of it is. But there are always tools to help you get there, and it's always good fresh air and good exercise. And I expect that it's a heck of a lot better for you to be out doing this than it is to be sitting on the couch watching TV or whatever. So I have a fairly large wood box inside, off to the side of the wood stove. It'll hold quite a bit more than this amount of wood. Probably enough, probably 3 or 4 times this. Certainly enough for probably 3 days, even in very cold weather. So if the weather is storming or particularly nasty, or if you just don't feel like it, there's enough wood in there that you don't have to be out there every single day or twice a day or whatever to take care of business. So this is the 3rd load, and we're pretty near at the end of the line for the wood box in there. There was a tiny bit in there from spring that had just been sitting there. So a few more sticks of this will go in. The previous owner of this property stacked some up along the edge of the deck there. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but right over here, I think what I'm going to do, I've just tossed some of this older wood out. This, for the most part, will probably just be burnt in my fire pit in the evenings when I just want to go and sit and have a fire. But what I am going to do is I'll put a couple of small logs across here as a base, and I'll stack up, because I have a load of wood coming, a lot of it. So probably 6 or 7 cords usually comes in a load. So there'll be lots of wood. So my wood shed probably won't hold all of that. So what I'll do is I'll stack a bunch of it up here, keep it off the ground a bit with some skids or something, and tarp it over, and I'll use that first, since it's simply not the most protected. And then after that's all gone, by then the snow will be getting a bit deeper and it'll be less convenient to get to this, and then I can just start feeding it out of the wood stove, out of the wood shed. I'll show you the wood shed now. Okay, so this is the forge and the anvil. It's right in front of the wood shed, which is that structure right there. Now the wood shed is, let's see, it's 7 feet deep and 7 feet tall at the center point. So that gives me an average. So 7 7s, that's 49 by 12 feet long. So that's 49 by 12, so about almost 500 cubic feet of space in there. And there is 128 cubic feet, 4 by 4 by 8. So 128 cubic feet in a cord, in a bush cord. So I can put 4 bush cords in there comfortably. There is a bit of a shed at the side there, but it's kind of falling down, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with that. The walls aren't bad, the roof is not good, but I could probably put a tarp in front of that and put another cord in there, if I really wanted to. Now, I spent yesterday, a good part of yesterday, cleaning this out. There was just junk everywhere left over from before I was here. So that was what today's, I don't even know what today is, 15th, so that would have been the 14th of August, Thursday anyways, no, Friday, whatever. Anyways, I was out here most of the day, and it was hot. It's always hot lately, but this is it. There's a few miscellaneous bits in there that I've just left in there for the moment, because I was using them in this area here. There's the old hunt shack over there, and that little spot right here is where the logs are going to be piled, and then I'll saw them up, and I'll have another piece over here for splitting them, and then directly into the woodshed. The other thing that I have, there's a lot of other things that I have here. This lake, or really to me it's a large pond, but they call it a lake. It's probably about 3 acres in size. This is, there are no incoming streams or water sources entering this pond. It's strictly spring fed, and whatever it gets from rain, of course. So it's pure spring fed water. There's no pollutants in it. I mean, there's nothing anywhere around here where it could even possibly get pollutants from. And I will never run out of water. And it's good water. I probably could drink it as it is. I won't. I'm going to run it through, I've made a filter with sand and fine particles and some charcoal. And that takes all the particles and chunks out of it. The charcoal will help filter it somewhat. And that will do for washing. And it will do for cooking, because chances are if I'm cooking with it, I'll be boiling it anyways during the course of the cooking. And for drinking water, I will boil it, or what I will do probably is I'll put it through the particle filter, pump it into that big tank, and then I will have a proper filtering system, a small micron filtering system. I'm even going to look into ultraviolet, see what it takes to power up a small system like that and what the cost is. That's getting a little bit technical for me, but I do have solar power here. Off-grid just means that you don't get your power or any of your supplies from the township or from the grid, as they say. It doesn't mean you can't have those things. So I do have solar power here, primarily for charging up the cameras and the laptop, so I can do the editing for this. I have a couple of lights that I can use off of that. I have coal oil lamps and the whole bit. So, but the point of this video, I think, was to show you that this is certainly a different lifestyle, and I know it's not for everybody. But here I have virtually unlimited water, unlimited heat. I'm never going to be thirsty. I'm never going to be cold. So I'm never going to be hungry. And in addition to that, the area where I am here is just abounding. It's wilderness up here. There's game everywhere. There are moose, bears and ducks and geese and partridge and rabbits, and the list goes on and on. So there's just the only money I really need, and it's hard in our day today to get away with no money at all, because there is a small amount of tax on this property. Being that it's an off-grid property, the taxes are next to nothing, but still, I have to be paid. I need some fuel for my vehicle and insurance, but you know, my costs are minimal, absolutely minimal. You could work odd jobs part-time and cover the expenses here. So it's just a very pleasant, relaxed way of life. I don't suffer any of the stresses that are typical with life in towns and cities. I haven't got people telling me what I can or can't do. I can walk my dog wherever I want, let him run out if he wants to a little bit. It's just the life for me, and I just can't imagine living somewhere where I don't have those choices of freedom. And this is what this really gives me. It gives me freedom. Freedom from worry about food and water and heat, and freedom from worry about bureaucracy and all the rest of it. So I hope it meant something to some of you. You got maybe some information out of it and maybe some thoughts on it. You don't have to be in the wilderness to do something like this. You don't even have to be off-grid to do something like this. even if you're in a town or on the edge of a town, if you've got a decent sized lot for your house, put a vegetable garden in. It's certainly not probably going to be big enough to be your sole source of vegetables or food, but you know what? The food is so much better quality. It's fresh right out of the garden. It goes from the garden into the table and it becomes my salad for supper in 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't get any fresher than that. There are no preservatives, no pesticides or herbicides or chemical fertilizers. It's just good quality life in every way. Thanks for watching. Everybody have a good week, and we'll see you down the trail.